Let me call the Stillwater Planning Commission May 12th, 2020 meeting to order. Let me call for the people to Cindy, you're supposed to call.
Call. Those in attendance, Mr. Bookert.
Present.
Mr. Nicholson.
Present.
Mr. Shanahan.
Present.
Ms. Vicky.
Present. My name's Fred Allred also.
The name threw me off.
Share his link with me.
And Mr. Allred.
Present.
Thank you. We have a full board in attendance.
Thank you very much. Item 2A, public hearing. IH Development LLC preliminary plat requesting review and approval to create a new residential single-family subdivision of 329 residential lots and 7 outlaw to be named Park Valley Addition, located on property currently addressed as 1823 West 26th Street and zoned as residential single-family small lot. Staff, will you make your presentation?
Happy to. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Ryan Harkins, Community Development Department. This is a proposed preliminary plat that was first heard in March 2020. This is called the Park Valley Edition. It is at 26th Western. The hatched area here that you see on the screen is the area that includes the proposed development. You can see 26th and Western, and that the proposed development is to the south and east of that intersection. This is the view looking north on the aerial photograph. The area inside the yellow is the proposed development site. It is zoned RSS and Ag. This is looking at street level, south on Western, and then across 26th Street. So this would be standing at the northwest corner of the proposed development site. This is the latest rendition of the proposed preliminary plat. You can see a total of 329 lots and 7 outlots. It includes a proposed an easement for a city water line that goes to the center of the development, as well as a connection to a proposed plat that the Planning Commission has previously given conditional approval for to the south. This is the future land use map. It indicates residential in this part of the community as far as its future growth. In fact, the comprehensive plan indicates low density residential. Staff at this point, in previous discussions with the applicant, has noted that there is an issue with water pressure in the area, as well as sewer capacity. They're proposing a lift station to take sewer out of the development and out to a public main along the north side of the development. How that's done is still to be decided. As of today, staff isn't totally sure what the applicant has in mind. That's something they're working through or have been working through. Same for the water pressure. So we'll let them address those concerns. Intent is to develop these lots in phases and for future residential development similar to what they've done elsewhere in the community. That staff is going to pause and ask if you have any questions of us.
Does the Planning Commission have any questions of the staff? See none.
Yes, sorry, Mike. Yes, I do.
Okay.
In regards to the drainage that's been submitted, the plan, it said revisions have been requested by city staff. Have those revisions been received, and has there been adequate time for their review?
I know we've received revisions. I'm going to let Lance Gross jump in case there's part of this that I miss. I know staff reviewed them. Lance, can you answer if the question if they've approved them?
I believe they were turned in last week, I believe, and I've not seen any response from that staff.
Okay. So right now, the official answer that I can give you is we've reviewed them. We're waiting for feedback from engineering and water utility on any other comments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the staff? Does the applicant want to say anything?
Yes. Zack Roach, 1320 North Porter, Norman, Oklahoma. I'm representing the developer. And first and foremost, I wanted to thank the city and the Planning Commission for making this available to us. I know that in these interesting times, it's been difficult having a workaround, and I do appreciate staff's and Planning Commission's ability to be flexible with us. So thank you very much for allowing us to appear before you in this manner. The preliminary plat that we're bringing in front of you today is the culmination of a lot of work over the last year, and I'm very excited to finally have something to show you all. I think that this preliminary plat is going to have some neat opportunities. It's going to build off some of the previous successes that we've had in Stillwater. We've had two previous communities, our Canyons community and our Trading community, which have done outstandingly well in the city, and we're looking forward to hopefully doing more of this in Stillwater in the coming months and years. A few things that I'd like to note about this preliminary plat, and I don't know if we have the ability to pop that back up on screen. If we do, if not, I can kind of talk you through some of the elements of it that we're excited about. As we were doing the layout, and there we go, perfect. As we were doing the layout and the design of this preliminary plat, one of the things that we've got in the southeast and south side of this plat is a large green space that we're going to be able to incorporate into the amenities. When Ideal Homes looks at a development, we don't just see lots and homes, we also see lifestyle. And in fact, I think that Chris Anderson, who has designed every preliminary plat I've worked on in my career just about, would tell you that we kind of start with our lifestyle component and we build around that. And this plat is no different than anything that we've done in the previous plats in other areas in town. And we get an opportunity with this one to start with kind of a clean slate and work what we want to do in terms of amenities and lifestyle driven components of the community up front. I'll draw your attention briefly to the two detention ponds that are going to be in the south side of this. Those will both be stocked fishing ponds. We'll have a catch and release program that we do on these ponds. We've got a really neat guy who manages over 700 ponds for the state of Oklahoma, several Army bases, and all of our ponds that we do. We'll be able to manage the biodiversity in those ponds, keep them clean, keep them good for fishing for families, have a catch and release policy, and hopefully be able to make that a really neat amenity. Another thing that we're excited about doing is incorporating walking trails into this. We plan on doing a large park, playground, splash pad, pavilion, doing all sorts of neat recreational opportunities as we come down through here. And this is going to be kind of the heart of the community. If you'll take a look at the preliminary plat, kind of running through the spine, I believe the city had mentioned the center part of this, there's a water line easement that the city has that's actually going to serve a dual purpose. The city's going to look at that water line easement. It's going to be a water line easement that we stay away from, absolutely. But what it's going to necessitate for us, though, is it's going to give us this neat, clear area for people to be able to ingress and egress across the development in a green walking path. We're going to encourage walkability. We found that as people are able to have direct connections to the amenities, and if we can get them to have a connection that's less than a quarter of a mile, they're less likely to drive, which encourages walking, which encourages people getting out and moving up and down. So that'll be a nice happenstance amenity in this project that we'll be able to have people able to walk around that green belt that kind of runs down the center of this. It will tie back into the walking trails that will be in the south and southeast portions of this preliminary plat. So this is just kind of my brief introduction to what we're planning, what we're thinking, and we are definitely hoping that the Planning Commission it will give us their support. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anybody in the Planning Commission have any questions of the?
Can I address some of the engineering comments before you move on a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if Lance and Ryan has this letter or not, but I have a letter from the city staff dated May 8th in response to our comments that we had addressed. They'd sent an initial letter out probably about a month ago. We addressed those comments and turned in the revisions. And going back through this second letter, looks like everything's pretty well addressed. A couple of minor things they still want us to look at. The big issues on the water pressure and the sewer, I think we've got worked out. As a matter of fact, Brandon Neal says, thanks to Lane, Perry, and Chris for the teamwork and the solution to a tough problem. So I think he's okay with what we're doing there. We're actually going to connect to a water pressure zone that's to the west of this site.
Just a second. Let me interrupt you for a moment.
Okay.
I've just been informed that you need to state your name and address and identify yourself. I apologize. So
No problem.
you would do that and then continue on.
Yeah, this is Chris Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers in Oklahoma City, working with Zack Roach on the project.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So anyway, we're tying to existing subdivision to the west into a different pressure zone there that gets the pressures up to where we need. In talking with Brandon, the issue with the sanitary sewer capacity actually had to do with an existing line to the north that runs along, I believe it's Walnut Drive. It's going parallel with the I think it's Teal Ridge Estate subdivision to the north of our site. And he had pointed out there's just one stretch of the existing line that was put in too flat, and that's where the capacity issue is. And so our solution to that is that we're going to relay that portion of line to get the slope that needs to be for the capacity. And everybody seems okay with both of those solutions. We did turn in the revised drainage report in Couch 2. I don't have any negative comments back on that. So again, I think with the letter that I've got dated May 8th from the city staff, I think we've addressed all of the concerns that they had.
Any questions of the engineer on the project?
Yes, I do. This is Mike Shanahan, Chris.
Yeah.
I know in the past, and it's to some extent still ongoing, there are water pressure issues in the southwest quadrant of the city. I know that I've had a lot of feedback regarding that from residents in the area for several years. Now, as I understand it, one of your solutions is to add one lift station. Is that correct?
Well, the lift station is for the sanitary sewer, not for the water.
Not for the water. Okay.
The water pressure issue is taken care of. There's two zones, and we're connecting. Right now, the site sits in the lower pressure zone. That's why we have issues. But to the west of the site, there's a higher pressure zone, and we're making a connection over into that higher zone, running a line along, I believe it's 26th Avenue, and tying into that pressure zone, which will allow us to get the pressures up to where we need.
And in your estimation, one lift station for the sanitary sewer will be adequate for a development of this size?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're actually partnering up with the Fry Farms people, which is the subdivision preliminary plat that you guys approved, I think, last month. It's directly adjacent to the south of us, and we're actually partnering with them because they need a sewer solution also. So we're doing a lift station that will be adequate to serve their side and our side, and then pump it to the north to an existing sanitary sewer there.
Okay.
Any other questions of the engineer?
This is Brad. I just, is there anything in your project that's contingent upon the Fry Farm project south of you? Or is it wholly encapsulated within itself, except
Yeah,
in
ours,
as far as this-
I would say if anything, their project is dependent on us because the lift station site is on our project. And we've extended a sewer on our project to the south that they will tie into and extend to our lift station. But no, there's nothing in their project that we're dependent on.
Any other questions of the engineer? Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing on this project. Cindy, do we have anybody that's signed up for the public hearing?
Yes, sir. Mr. Jimmy Hill would like to speak.
Mr. Hill, you're welcome to speak. If you'd introduce yourself and give the address, I'd greatly appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me at this time?
I can hear you.
I'm Jimmy Hill, 2700 South Western. We own and reside on 15 acres of land at 2700 South Western, consisting of about 900 feet of frontage across Western proposed addition. We note this preliminary plat proposes many rows of minimal sized residential lots, approximately 329. It would seem more desirable to the southwest area of Stillwater to size lots more in keeping with adjacent properties. With that being said, I do have two specific requests I would like to make of you. As platted, the proposed addition will include about 18 or 20 lots, which back up to Western across from our property. Unless screened, our view will consist of that many backyards, the typical backyard sites. Also, residents of those lots would be exposed to the heavy traffic on Western, which will surely continue to increase, considering the development here and further south. If residents of those exposed lots are left to provide or not to provide screening, there would likely be some unfenced, others with a variety of styles and colors, leaving a very negative view of the development. We would request of you that any approval of this plat be conditioned on the installation and maintenance of an opaque visual barrier at least 6 feet high along the entire west boundary. A good example of that is the existing fence along Western at Summerlin addition, just north of this proposed addition. Installation of this type of visual barrier should be required prior to the first certificate of occupancy being granted. Secondly, I'm requesting that a sewer easement be platted from whatever manhole may be located and designed nearest the southwest corner of Park Valley west to the section boundary. This would preserve the possibility of a future sewer connection for our property joining on the west. I do appreciate the arrangements you've made for this hearing and respectfully request strong consideration of these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does the Planning Commission have any questions of Mr. Hill?
No.
Is there anyone else scheduled to speak in the public hearing?
No, sir.
Let me officially close the public hearing. Does the developer have any comments they'd like to add, especially about the fence and the sanitary sewer easement?
Sure. I think I can put to bed some of those concerns immediately. The HOA, every development that we do has a homeowners association. Written into the covenants and guidelines that will be filed of record before the first home is sold are going to be fence standards that guide having a fencing requirement for an HOA maintained fence. And the perk of this is that fence will be installed and maintained by the cost of the HOA and will be required by covenant to be in working condition and repair for the life of the development, meaning that it will not be on the individual homeowners to do that, but the HOA will be required, like I said, by covenant to take care of that fence. That will go in as we plat those sections. And so it won't go in for the entire stretch of it all at once, but what will happen is that if we carve off, let's say 10 of those 18 lots that the gentleman had described, well, then those 10 lots will have 6-foot fences put up immediately with the beginning of the development. Another thing that we like to do is we like to do what's called the green wall. And so I would agree that in a vacuum, not having something on your boundary is unattractive. Fortunately, though, what we do is we come in with a series of plantings. We'll plant trees and shrubs and greenery. And the neat thing about having greenery planted is that as fences age, the best that they're going to look is the day that they get installed. But as we plant vegetation, it only gets better and more attractive long term. That'll be provided with an irrigation system to ensure that those vegetations are in good working condition for the life of the project and only get bigger and stronger. So the hope is that within 10 or 15 years, that the vegetation that we plant actually becomes a green wall, and that green wall will dwarf any and all fencing that we have there, which will also be there. But I think that the longer that we go with vegetation, the more attractive it is. And with the regular 6-foot fence, which we will also put in, it's just a 6-foot fence. But I think that should waylay any of those concerns.
What material, do you know what material you're going to do on this fence?
Yeah, it will be a 6-foot dog-eared fence, standard wood privacy fence. And it will be absolutely
wood privacy
opaque.
fence.
Yes, sir. As to the question about the sewer easement, I'm sure that we can plat an easement over to the corner of the property to the right of way, and to the extent that we own to there. I don't think that will be an issue whatsoever.
So you're in agreement that if we pass this tonight, if we add that on there, that easement needs to be platted in the final plat. You're in agreement with that?
Yeah, we'll just incorporate that as part of whatever final plat becomes,
Yes.
as we carve that off. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments you'd like to make?
No, I appreciate it's good feedback from the community and happy to do what we can to address those issues.
Does the Planning Commission have any other questions of the applicant? Staff, you want to go over the recommendations?
Sure, we can certainly do that. So at the present time, proposed layout, it meets subdivision and zoning requirements. There's over 30 lots, so there's multiple exits. Which land development code requires at least 2. As you can see on the PowerPoint slide, the comp plan recommends low density residential uses in this area. Majority of land use proposed as residential. There's some ag in this area right now. That would mainly stay to be the area on the east end of this proposed development, which is going to be more detention, pond, and recreation. Proposed density is within the RSS zoning requirements. The lots they propose are anywhere from 5,000 up to just over 7,000 square feet. Based on that, you can accept the findings. Staff feels as long as the applicant can meet the issues and get those addressed, which they feel confident in based on their discussions and as they've presented information tonight, you can accept findings and recommend approval as presented. You can find the request as not appropriate and recommend denial of the proposed preliminary plat. You can table to a certain date, you can approve or you can approve with conditions, stipulate what those conditions are, and they would have to meet those prior to submission of the final plat, or at the time the final plat is submitted for approval. Questions of staff over those issues?
So we could add, I'm assuming the developer agrees to this, that there will be a fence along Western Avenue and there will be a sanitary sewer easement in the project.
You can make that a condition of approval to include that easement, yes.
Okay. But in terms of the fence, is there anything we can do to, in our motion, to make sure that's included, or is it already included in the plat itself, or is it not appropriate to include in the plat?
Well, they have not included that in the proposed preliminary plat. What they've shared with you tonight is that that is something they would do through covenants, and as just a matter of procedure that they do in their construction and their development practices.
Okay.
The thing in the land development code that requires them to do that type of screening along the perimeter lots of a proposed subdivision. In this case, you have residential development against residential development across with only a street in between. So there's no requirement in the development code that would say they have to do screening on those back lots that abut Western. You can make the ask and it would be a nice thing, but there's no requirement for them to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions of the staff by the Planning Commission? Discussion? Any discussion at this particular time?
I seem to remember, and it's now been a couple months, but when we talked about this in March, there was a lot of discussion about 26th and the traffic. And I don't know if everybody remembers that discussion, but there was a lot of people that came in at that time, at least with some concerns about that. Has there been any progress from the city side in terms of looking at that or thinking about what goes on there? Of course, then all the schools got closed, so I don't, they probably didn't have any traffic problems with nobody going anywhere. But I seem to remember that from our meeting that we held back in March, but I may be wrong on that.
No, you're correct, Commissioner Rickleman. That was one of the issues that was raised, particularly by people that lived along 26th. The issue in terms of how that gets resolved would be having to require dedication of additional right-of-way or purchase of right-of-way. Right now, the development code does not require them to do an additional dedication of right-of-way. Staff has been working behind the scenes on a potential update for the land development code and have included that as a requirement for issues like this. There's nothing requiring them to do that, so there's really no resolution. It would be at full build-out, a subdivision of 329 lots that feeds into 2 arterial streets that are currently sitting at 2-lane rural standards.
So has staff done any consideration or long-range planning as how the street infrastructure, essentially Southwestern and 26, which you just discussed, will be impacted by this development, and then of course the other development which will be further south of it?
We have not done a traffic impact study. We have suggested to the applicant that they sit down with the developer south and do one large traffic impact study before they submit the final plat for either subdivision in order to put those impacts in writing, and we can start to work through potential solutions that way. Unfortunately, right now, there's not a lot that we have at our disposal to do more than that.
Given that whatever amount of traffic is generated by this development and the other development, the city will have to assume the cost of expanding or improving the street infrastructure there to accommodate the traffic.
That is correct. And that will be a cost borne citywide, both for 26th as well as for Western.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. I also have questions regarding the sanitary sewer, the water pressure, the water service, and then the drainage. So as I understand it, because I haven't seen anything, Chris Anderson informed us that city staff has reviewed the plans and have given him favorable feedback.
Yes, that is correct.
But we have no verification of that in front of the Planning Commission.
No, we don't have that information included in the packet. That comment letter would have been a staff comment letter sent to the engineer and developer based on last submittal of revisions that they made to the plat and subsequent supporting material.
As I understand the requirements of the city of Stillwater, that they would have to, before the final plat is approved, address all those issues and then get that letter and then have all that information. It is not required at this preliminary plat stage. As I hear from the engineer, they have addressed all those, and being a civil engineer, I believe all of them seem like a logical approach, but in my opinion, shouldn't hold up the preliminary plat, but they need to address that, and we need to have review and confirmation from the city engineer when the final plat comes back.
Yes, absolutely. We will have to turn in actual construction plans with the final plats, and they will review it at that time. And obviously, they won't let the project go forward if they're not happy with the solution.
In all three areas, in the sanitary sewer, water area, and in the stormwater area.
Correct.
And as a point of information, Mr. Chair, just to help those watching or for others on the commission who aren't used to the process, typically once a preliminary plat is given approval, an applicant would submit improvement plans as well as any other changes that need to be made from the preliminary plat process. Staff would review those. We'd go through revisions if need be. Once those are completed, then they would typically submit the final plat, knowing that it matches what we walked through the improvement process. Council and the Planning Commission would see the final plat. When council has the final plat, they're basically accepting the improvements at that time. And I know that might seem a little muddy, so Lance and Mr. Norman and Dennis can jump in and clarify that if need be, but those are kind of the next steps and where we go from here.
And one other thing, I don't know if Zach mentioned this or not, but they won't come in and put in 300 lots all at once. The first plat will be anywhere from, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably 30 to 60 lots.
Yeah, it'd be about 60 on the first one.
Yeah. So it's not going to happen overnight for 300 lots appear there.
But by the same token, you'll be designing the water, sewer, stormwater for the entire development. And
Correct.
To be implemented before you develop any lots.
Yes. The lift station, the correction to the existing sewer to the north, and the connection to the water, the higher water pressure zone will all happen with the first phase of 30 to 60 lots, yes.
As well as the stormwater detention facility.
Correct.
Mike, you got questions or comments, or does any planning commissioner have a question or comment at this time? So let's go to planning commission discussion and or a motion. Does the planning commissioners have any comments they'd like to make or make a motion?
I'm satisfied, and I would move that we accept the findings and approve the proposed preliminary plat as presented, conditional on the addition of the sewer easement per Mr. Hill.
And I second that.
Any other planning commission discussion before we go to a vote? Let's vote. Let's call the roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Boogert,
Yes.
Mr. Rickelman. You're muted.
No, I'm trying. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Ms. Jerome,
Yes.
Mr. Allred.
Yes.
The motion to approve the plat, condition of the sewer line connection easement for the corner there is approved.
Thank you very much. I don't see anything else on the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I second that.
Roll call?
Mr. Boogert,
Yes.
Mr. Rickelman,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Ms. Allred,
Yes.
Mr. Allred, I'm sorry. Mr. Allred.
Yes.
That was Mr. Rahman, and then Mr. Allred was yes as well.
Yes.
The motion passes. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
6:07.